Chosen one. What if everyone you've called family your entire life has been strangers? What if the blood running through your veins connects you to people who were never meant to understand your heart? What if you've been sitting at the wrong table for 70, 80, maybe 90 years, waiting for a feast that was never meant for you? Stop. Right there. Feel that flutter in your chest. That's not your imagination. That's recognition. I don't know where you're sitting right now. Maybe it's that same worn recliner where you've asked God 1,000 times why you feel so alone, even surrounded by people who share your last name. Maybe you're staring at family photos on the mantle, wondering why you feel like a stranger in your own story. But I know this: if this message has found you tonight, it's not random. It's divine appointment. Something is shifting in the spiritual realm, and it has your name written all over it. Here's the shocking truth they never told you. The family that raised you was only your starting point, not your destination, not your tribe, not your people. You were placed there for preparation, for testing, for refining, but you were never meant to stay hidden among those who couldn't see your light. Tomorrow, and I mean literally tomorrow, a door opens that has been sealed your entire life. Miss it, and you may spend your remaining years wondering why you never felt at home in your own skin. But step through it, and you'll finally understand why you felt like a royal living in exile. Chosen ones, if you miss tomorrow, you may never know who your real family is. Listen to me carefully. That restlessness you've carried for decades, that ache when you look around the dinner table and feel invisible, that wasn't loneliness. That was your soul crying out for its true tribe. The family that sees you, knows you, honors what heaven placed inside you before you took your first breath. For too long, you've tried to love people who were spiritually allergic to your purpose. You've poured yourself into vessels with cracks in all the wrong places. You've given your pearls to those who couldn't tell the difference between treasure and trash. But tomorrow, the magnetic pull begins. Your real family, your soul family, your destiny family, they're being awakened to your frequency. They're being drawn by a force no man can interfere with. And when they find you, when your eyes meet theirs, you'll finally exhale a breath you've been holding for a lifetime. Before we go deeper into this sacred mystery, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through Super Thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and sow that seed of faith. But right now, if something stirs in you, if you feel that ancient knowing rising in your chest, don't ignore it. Comment, "I'm ready" below. Let heaven see your alignment. Let the universe know you're done waiting for crumbs when you were born for the feast. Because what I'm about to reveal next will change everything you thought you knew about family, belonging, and why you've felt like a stranger for so long. Why have you spent 70 years feeling like a stranger at your own family reunions? Why does your heart sink every time you walk into a room full of people who share your DNA but can't seem to share your dreams? Why do you sit in church pews surrounded by believers yet feel more spiritually isolated than when you're completely alone? Because you were never meant to fit there. Listen to me, dear one. That ache in your chest when you watch other families laugh together effortlessly, that wasn't jealousy. That hollowness you feel when your own children look at you like you're speaking a foreign language, that wasn't failure. That restlessness that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., wondering if anyone truly sees you, that wasn't loneliness. That was your soul recognizing it was in the wrong room. You've spent decades trying to squeeze your royal spirit into spaces designed for servants. You've dimmed your light so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable in their darkness. You've apologized for being too deep, too sensitive, too intense, too much. But what if I told you that too much was exactly the right amount for the table you were meant to sit at? You were the right instrument in the wrong orchestra. Think about this. When a violin finds itself in a marching band, it doesn't make the violin defective, it makes the placement wrong. When a rose is planted in desert soil, it doesn't make the rose weak. It makes the environment unsuitable. And when a chosen one is placed among those who can't recognize divine frequency, it doesn't make the chosen one broken. It makes the arrangement temporary. God spoke to Jeremiah and said, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Set apart, not cast aside, not forgotten, set apart, separated, hidden, protected until the appointed time. But here's what breaks my heart about your story. You've spent years thinking something was wrong with you because you couldn't bond with people who were spiritually operating on a different frequency. You've cried tears of confusion because your passion for purpose felt foreign to those around you. You've questioned your worth because your gifts weren't celebrated in spaces that couldn't contain your calling. Stop questioning yourself. Start questioning the environment. Look at Joseph, 17 years old with dreams from heaven, surrounded by brothers who threw him in a pit for sharing his vision. Was Joseph the problem? Or was he placed in that family to be refined, tested, and eventually positioned to save nations? His brothers saw a dreamer who needed to be silenced. God saw a deliverer who needed to be seasoned. Your family saw someone who needed to conform. God saw someone who needed to be preserved. Consider Ruth, a Moabite woman who left everything familiar to follow Naomi into a foreign land. She didn't belong by blood. She didn't belong by culture. She didn't belong by tradition. But she belonged by destiny. And that belonging led her into the lineage of Jesus Christ himself. Sometimes God plants you in foreign soil not to punish you, but to position you for a harvest that transcends your original environment. Think about David, the forgotten son. When Samuel came looking for the next king of Israel, Jesse paraded 7 sons before the prophet. 7, but David wasn't even invited to the interview. He was in the fields, invisible to his own father, tending sheep while his brothers stood in the spotlight. But God told Samuel, "Don't look at his appearance or his height, for I have rejected them." The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. David's family saw a shepherd boy. God saw a king. Your family sees your age and thinks decline. God sees your experience and thinks deployment. They see your solitude and think isolation. God sees your separation and thinks preparation. They see your unconventional path and think mistake. God sees your unique journey and thinks masterpiece. Jesus himself said in John 15:19, "If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world." Chosen you out of the world. Not chosen you for the world, out of it, different from it, set apart from it. That's why you've never felt at home in conversations about retirement plans and rocking chairs. That's why your spirit rebels when people tell you to slow down, settle down, sit down. That's why you feel more alive talking about purpose than prescriptions, more energized discussing destiny than diagnoses. You weren't built for their timeline. You were built for God's. But here's where the enemy played his cruelest trick. He convinced you that being different meant being defective. He whispered that not fitting in meant not measuring up. He made you believe that your spiritual sensitivity was emotional instability, that your prophetic insight was mental confusion, that your divine discontent was personal failure. He lied. Every time you felt out of place, you were exactly where God needed you to be for that season. Every time you felt misunderstood, you were being protected from settling for less than your calling. Every time you felt rejected, you were being redirected toward your real assignment. What if your disconnection wasn't rejection, it was divine protection, because your real family wasn't ready yet? What if every door that closed in your face was God's way of saving you from building a life among people who would never truly see you? What if every relationship that fell apart was heaven clearing space for connections that would honor your essence? What if every season of loneliness was preparation for a community so aligned with your spirit that you'll wonder how you ever survived without them? That ache in your chest, what if that wasn't emptiness? What if that was heaven's fingerprint? What if God allowed you to feel the void so you would recognize the fullness when it arrives? You've been a prophet without honor in your own house. You've been a king in exile. You've been a bride waiting for a groom who was being prepared in another place. But the waiting is almost over. The exile is ending. The recognition is coming. If this is speaking to your spirit right now, if you feel that stirring in your bones that says, "This is my story," don't you dare stay silent. Declare it. Say it out loud. I was set apart. I was not forgotten. Comment below and let heaven witness your awakening. Because what I'm about to show you next will prove that every tear you cried in isolation was actually watering the ground for a reunion so divine, so perfectly orchestrated, that you'll understand why you had to walk through the wilderness to get to the promised land. Right now, as you're listening to my voice, something ancient is awakening inside your chest. Can you feel it? That quickening in your spirit, that sudden awareness that this moment, this very second, was ordained before time began. Heaven is whispering your name. Not the name on your birth certificate, not the name your family calls you. The name God spoke over you in eternity past, when He assigned you to this generation for a purpose so specific that only you can fulfill it. But here's what's breaking my heart tonight. You've been sitting in churches for decades, surrounded by people who call themselves your brothers and sisters in Christ, yet you still feel spiritually orphaned. You've been at family reunions where the conversation never goes deeper than the weather, and you walk away feeling more alone than when you arrived. That isolation wasn't punishment, beloved. That was preparation. Remember Elijah? 1 Kings chapter 19. This mighty prophet, the man who called down fire from heaven, who raised the dead, who stood against 450 false prophets, found himself hiding in a cave, crying out to God, "I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too. The only one left." Sound familiar? How many times have you whispered those exact words? How many nights have you lain awake wondering if you're the only one who still believes in miracles? The only one who still expects God to move mountains? The only one who refuses to settle for religious routine when your soul is crying out for divine encounter? But listen to what God told Elijah in verse 18. "Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal." 7,000. Hidden, preserved, scattered across the land, thinking they were alone, when all along they were part of a remnant that God had been protecting in secret places. Chosen one, you are not the only one left. You never were. You've been tuned like a violin, perfectly calibrated, exquisitely sensitive, capable of producing the most beautiful music this world has ever heard. But your orchestra hasn't arrived. Until now. There are others who've been walking through their own caves of isolation, others who've been questioning if they missed their calling, others who've felt like strangers in their own families, foreigners in their own churches, aliens in a world that can't seem to hear the frequency they're broadcasting. But something shifted 3 days ago in the spiritual realm. The same God who revealed those 7,000 to Elijah is now revealing your tribe to you, not through family trees or church directories, but through divine orchestration that will leave you breathless. You want to know why you've felt so restless lately? Why sleep has been interrupted by dreams you can't quite remember but can't quite forget? Why you've been drawn to reach out to people you haven't spoken to in years? Your spirit is picking up signals. Divine frequencies are being activated. Your real family, your soul family, your destiny family, they're being awakened to your existence right now. There is someone watching for you, assigned to your frequency. Someone who carries the missing piece of your puzzle, the completion of your calling, the harmony to your melody, and they might find you tomorrow. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. He's been working overtime to convince you that your time has passed, that at 70, 80, 90 years old, your season of meaningful connection is over. That divine family is a young person's game. That's a lie straight from the pit of hell. Abraham was 75 when God called him into covenant. Moses was 80 when he faced Pharaoh. Anna, the prophetess, was 84 when she recognized the Messiah. Caleb was 85 when he said, "Give me this mountain." Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your qualification. Every year you've lived has been adding depth to your spirit, wisdom to your voice, authority to your presence. The family God is bringing you isn't looking for someone young and untested. They're looking for someone seasoned and proven. They're looking for someone exactly like you. But here's the urgency that should grip your heart right now. This divine appointment has a window. Not because God operates on human timelines, but because your willingness to receive it has an expiration date. How many more years will you spend believing the lie that meaningful connection is behind you? How many more family gatherings will you endure, feeling like a guest at your own table? How many more church services will you sit through, surrounded by people but spiritually starving? How many more nights will you go to bed wondering if anyone on earth truly sees you? The stirring you feel right now isn't nostalgia, it's not wishful thinking. It's your spirit recognizing that the season of isolation is ending and the season of divine connection is beginning. Your real family doesn't need your resume. They don't need to know your net worth or your social status. They'll recognize you the same way sheep recognize their shepherd's voice, instantly, instinctively, inevitably. When they speak, your soul will respond. When they laugh, your heart will remember what joy feels like. When they pray, you'll feel covered in ways you've never experienced. Because they're not just praying for you, they're praying from the same burden, the same calling, the same divine assignment that's been burning in your chest for decades. You're not too old. You're not too late. Your real tribe is still coming, and they're looking for you by spirit, not surname. But the question that will determine whether you step into this divine connection or remain in spiritual exile is this: are you ready to stop settling for surface relationships and start believing that God still arranges divine appointments for people your age? Because what I'm about to show you next will prove that tomorrow isn't just another day on your calendar. Chosen one, you've been camped at the base of the mountain your entire life, looking up, wondering, hoping. But tomorrow, the cloud moves. And if you're not ready to break camp and follow, you'll watch your destiny disappear into the distance while you remain exactly where you've always been. Let me tell you what happens to those who miss their divine appointment. Do you remember the parable Jesus told about the 10 virgins? 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. All 10 had been invited to the wedding feast. All 10 knew the bridegroom was coming. But when midnight struck, when the cry went out, "Behold, the bridegroom comes," only 5 were ready. Only 5 had oil in their lamps. Only 5 could see in the darkness. The other 5, they scrambled, they panicked, they begged for oil from those who were prepared. But it was too late. Matthew 25:10 tells us the devastating truth. While they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding, and the door was shut. When they finally returned, when they pounded on that door crying, "Lord, Lord, open to us," what did the bridegroom say? "Assuredly, I say to you, I do not know you. I do not know you." Not because they weren't invited, not because they weren't chosen, but because they missed their moment. They hesitated when they should have moved. They delayed when they should have decided. Chosen one, that door isn't opening twice. That invitation isn't being extended indefinitely. Tomorrow is your midnight hour, your oil in the lamp moment, your final call to step into the identity you've been hiding from for decades. You want to know what terrifies me most? It's not that you might die. It's that you might die with your song still locked inside your chest, with your real family still strangers, with your true purpose still wrapped in the grave clothes of fear and familiarity. I see them all the time, precious souls who live their entire lives wondering, what if? What if I had been braver? What if I had trusted that stirring in my spirit? What if I had stepped out when heaven was calling my name? They carry their regret like a stone in their chest, whispering to anyone who'll listen, "I had dreams once, I felt called once, but I waited too long." Don't let that be your epitaph. Here's what the enemy knows that you've forgotten. Divine appointments have expiration dates. God's invitations come with heaven's timing, not human convenience. When Moses stood before the burning bush, he didn't get to say, "Can I think about it for a few years?" When Mary heard Gabriel's announcement, she didn't ask for a committee meeting. When Peter heard "Follow me," he didn't negotiate the terms. They moved when heaven moved. They said yes when eternity was listening. But you? You've been saying someday for so long that someday has become never. You've been waiting for perfect conditions in an imperfect world. You've been demanding guarantees from a God who only gives promises. And while you've been hesitating, your real family has been searching. They've been praying for someone like you. They've been asking God to send them the missing piece of their divine puzzle. They've been crying out in their own wilderness seasons, "Where is the one who speaks our language? Where is the soul who carries our frequency?" They're out there right now, chosen one. This very moment, some of them are lying awake at 3 a.m., feeling an unexplainable urgency to pray for someone they haven't met yet. Some of them are being stirred by the Holy Spirit to make room in their lives for a divine connection. Some of them are being prepared by circumstances that seem random but are actually orchestrated. But if you miss tomorrow, if you let fear win one more time, they'll keep searching, and you'll keep wondering. And the greatest reunion of your lifetime will become the greatest missed opportunity of your eternity. Think about Esther. The king extended his golden scepter to her, but she had to choose to approach the throne. She had to risk everything on one moment of divine favor. Mordecai's words echo through the centuries. Who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Who knows whether you've survived everything you've survived? Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every lonely night, just to arrive at this moment. Who knows whether every closed door, every delayed blessing, every season of preparation has been leading to tomorrow? But here's the part that should make your spirit tremble. Esther could have said no. She could have chosen safety over assignment. She could have let fear make her decision, and if she had, another would have risen to save the Jewish people, but she and her father's house would have perished. God's plan doesn't stop when you hesitate, but your part in it does. Your real family will find each other, with or without you. The divine connections will be made, the kingdom work will be accomplished, the revival will come. But will you be part of it? Will you be seated at the table you were born to occupy? Or will you be watching from the outside, wondering what could have been? God never gives you a gift He doesn't intend to use. He never plants a dream He doesn't plan to fulfill. He never whispers a calling He doesn't expect you to answer. But He also never forces your hand. He never overrides your choice. He never violates your will. The invitation is extended. The door is open. The oil is available. But you have to choose to fill your lamp. You have to decide to trust the stirring in your spirit. You have to stop making excuses and start making moves. Don't miss your moment. Don't let tomorrow come and go while you're still debating whether you're worthy of the calling on your life. Don't spend your remaining years wondering who you could have met, what you could have built, how you could have flourished, if you had just said yes when heaven was saying, "It's time." Share this message with someone who might be part of your real family. Comment below. I won't miss my assignment. Let heaven see that you're done living small when you were born for greatness. Because, chosen one, the clock isn't just ticking. It's about to strike midnight, and when it does, everything changes. The question is, will you be ready? Listen to me, dear one. Right now, somewhere in America, there's a grandmother in Toledo, Ohio, sitting by her kitchen window, staring at her phone. She's had your number saved for 3 years, but never called. She doesn't even know why she kept it. But something in her spirit keeps whispering your name. She doesn't know that you're the missing piece to a prayer she's been praying since 1987. There's a widower in Phoenix, Arizona, who's been writing letters he never sends. Letters to someone he's never met but feels like he's known forever. He thinks he's losing his mind, but heaven knows better. Those letters, they're for you. Your divine family isn't some mystical concept floating in the clouds. They're flesh and blood, breathing the same air, walking the same earth, carrying the same ache in their chest that you've been carrying for decades. They speak your soul language without needing a backstory. You want to know what real family feels like? It's when someone looks at you and sees your calling before you even mention it. It's when your pain doesn't scare them because they've walked through their own fire. It's when they hear your voice and something in their spirit says, "There you are, I've been waiting." They don't complete you, they unlock you. Think about this. You've spent 70, 80, maybe 90 years learning to shrink yourself to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. You've translated your thoughts into smaller words so others wouldn't feel intimidated. You've dimmed your light so others wouldn't feel overshadowed. You've carried burdens alone because the people around you couldn't handle the weight of your calling. But your real family? They've been carrying their own weight. They've been walking their own lonely roads. They've been praying their own desperate prayers. And every single step has been leading them to you. In Genesis 2:18, God said, "It is not good for man to be alone." But here's what most preachers won't tell you. This wasn't just about marriage. This was about divine connection. This was about finding your tribe, your people, your spiritual DNA match. Adam wasn't just lonely for a wife. He was lonely for someone who understood his assignment, someone who could walk in the garden with him and see what he saw, someone who wouldn't question his conversations with God or wonder why he named the animals with such precision. He needed his equal, his match, his divine counterpart. That's what you've been missing. Not just companionship, but recognition. Not just friendship, but spiritual alignment. Not just someone to talk to, but someone who speaks your frequency. And right now, this very moment, they're closer than you think. What if tomorrow a phone call changes everything? What if a message on Facebook from someone you barely remember turns out to be the divine appointment you were born for? What if that stranger who's been showing up in your dreams finally walks into your grocery store? Don't tell me it's impossible. In Acts 8, Philip was transported instantly from one place to another to meet one Ethiopian man who was hungry for truth. One divine appointment that changed a nation. If God can move a man through space and time for one conversation, what makes you think he can't orchestrate a meeting that's been planned since before you were born? You've been conditioned to believe that miracles are rare. But what if they're not rare? What if they're reserved? Reserved for moments when heaven says, "Now, this is the moment. This is the time." Here's what's breaking my heart right now. Some of you are thinking, "But I'm too old. I'm set in my ways. I don't have time to build new relationships." That's exactly what the enemy wants you to believe. That's the lie that keeps you isolated, disconnected, and dying a slow death of spiritual starvation. But Moses was 80 when God introduced him to Aaron, his divine partner in ministry. 80. Ruth was a widow when she met Boaz. Naomi thought her story was over until Ruth became her legacy. God specializes in divine introductions when the world thinks it's too late. Your real family isn't looking for you to be young. They're looking for you to be authentic. They're not impressed by your achievements. They're moved by your survival. They don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be present. And here's the mystery that will blow your mind. You're not just waiting on them. They're praying for someone like you too. And heaven is synchronizing your timelines. Right now, someone is asking God to send them a mentor who's been through what they're going through. Someone else is begging heaven for a friend who understands their calling. Another soul is crying out for a spiritual parent who can see their potential when they can't see it themselves. Your loneliness hasn't been punishment. It's been preparation. God has been developing in you exactly what they need. Your pain has become their healing. Your wisdom has become their guidance. Your survival has become their hope. In Ecclesiastes 3:1, Solomon wrote, "To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven." Your season of isolation is ending. Your time of connection is beginning. The appointments are already set. The meetings are already arranged. The introductions are already scheduled. But here's the part that should terrify you. Timing is everything. Miss the moment and you miss the miracle. Dismiss the nudge and you forfeit the breakthrough. Ignore the stirring and you stay stuck in the story you've always known, instead of stepping into the destiny you were born for. Tomorrow isn't just another day on the calendar. Tomorrow is the day heaven has circled in red. The day when what's been hidden in darkness finally steps into the light. The day when your real family stops being a prayer and starts being your reality. But what happens if you're not ready to receive them? You know what breaks my heart? It's watching God's chosen ones waste their final years, believing they're invisible. Believing their story ended when their spouse died. Believing their purpose expired when they retired. Believing that at 70, 80, 90 years old, God has moved on to younger, stronger vessels. That's the biggest lie the enemy has ever whispered in your ear. Listen to me carefully, dear one. Right now, at this very moment, there is someone searching for you. Not just anyone, someone appointed by the throne of heaven itself. Someone who carries the keys to unlock what's been sealed inside you for decades. Someone who holds the missing piece to your legacy puzzle. But here's the urgent truth that should shake you to your core. They can't find you in hiding. Think about Joseph. 30 years old, rotting in an Egyptian prison, forgotten by everyone who once knew his name. 30 years old. His brothers had written him off as dead. His father mourned him as lost. Even the cupbearer who promised to remember him let his name slip into the shadows of memory. But Pharaoh was searching. Not for Joseph specifically. Pharaoh didn't even know Joseph existed. But he was searching for someone who could interpret the impossible, someone who could see what others couldn't see, someone who carried divine wisdom wrapped in human flesh. When that call came from the palace, Joseph didn't have time to perfect his resume. He didn't get to practice his presentation. He went straight from the dungeon to the throne room, from forgotten prisoner to second in command of the most powerful nation on earth, in one day. One divine appointment. One heaven-orchestrated meeting. The person looking for you right now doesn't know your name yet either. But they know your anointing. They feel your absence in their success. They sense that someone is missing from their equation. You think your age disqualifies you. Moses was 80 when God introduced him to his greatest assignment. 80. When Pharaoh finally met the man who would bring Egypt to its knees, he wasn't looking at some young revolutionary. He was staring into the weathered face of a man who had spent 4 decades learning humility in the wilderness. Your wrinkles aren't signs of expiration, they're certificates of preparation. But here's where it gets personal. Here's where this message stops being theory and starts cutting into the marrow of your reality. How many divine appointments have you missed because you were hiding behind "I'm too old"? How many doors of destiny have remained unopened because you decided you were past your prime? That business idea that keeps resurfacing in your mind. That ministry calling that won't leave you alone. That book you've been meaning to write. That skill you've been meaning to share. That wisdom you've been keeping to yourself. Someone needs exactly what you carry. Someone is praying for precisely what you've learned. Someone is searching for the solution that only your experience can provide. Daniel understood this mystery. When King Nebuchadnezzar's wise men couldn't interpret his dream, the king wasn't looking for the youngest consultant in Babylon. He was searching for someone who could access realms beyond human understanding. Daniel was probably in his 20s then. Yes, but he carried the wisdom of someone who had walked with God through exile, through separation, through seasons of feeling forgotten. Your exile seasons weren't punishment. They were preparation for the meeting that's coming. Esther felt this pull too. She wasn't searching for a palace. The palace was searching for her. For such a time as this, Mordecai told her. Not for such a time as yesterday, when she was younger. Not for such a time as someday, when she might feel more ready. For such a time as this, right now, at this exact moment in history. The person assigned to unlock your next season is already circling your orbit. They're making decisions right now that will intersect with your path. They're having conversations that will lead them to you. They're experiencing problems that only your wisdom can solve. But they can't find you if you're hiding behind the lie that your season is over. You thought your story was ending in quiet, collecting Social Security, watching game shows, waiting for grandchildren to call. But God is about to write your most impactful chapter through divine partnership. Not partnership based on what you can do with your failing body, but partnership based on what you carry in your unbreakable spirit. This isn't just about finding people, dear one. This is about spiritual inheritance. This is about wealth of legacy that can't be counted in dollars but can change the trajectory of generations. This is about divine favor that doesn't decrease with age, it increases with wisdom. The wealth transfer that's coming to you won't happen through lottery tickets or inheritance checks. It will happen through divine connections, through relationships that unlock resources, through partnerships that multiply your impact, through favor that opens doors you didn't even know existed. But if you miss tomorrow, if you let another day pass believing you're invisible, irrelevant, past your expiration date, you may never know who your real family was. You may never meet the person who was sent to activate what God planted in you before you were born. The tragedy isn't that you'll die without knowing your purpose. The tragedy is that someone else will die without receiving what only you could give them. Right now, someone is one decision away from finding you, one conversation away from recognizing what you carry, one divine moment away from unlocking the final act of your destiny. The question that will determine your legacy is this: will you step out of hiding long enough to be found? Because the search party heaven sent for you, they're getting closer. You know what breaks my heart? It's not the people who never hear the call. It's the ones who hear it perfectly, and then spend the next 20 years explaining why they can't answer. Let me tell you about the great banquet. Jesus told this story in Luke chapter 14, and it's going to cut straight through every excuse you've been nursing like a security blanket. A man prepared a magnificent feast. Everything was ready. The table was set. The finest wine was poured. The invitation went out. Come, for everything is now ready. But listen to what happened next. One by one they started making excuses. I just bought a field, and I must go and see it. I just bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I'm on my way to examine them. I just got married, so I can't come. Sound familiar? Because right now, sitting there in your living room, you're doing the exact same thing. The invitation to your divine family has been delivered. The table is set. Your chair is waiting. But you're sitting there crafting excuses like they're poetry. I'm too old now. That was for my younger years. I'm too damaged. God uses clean vessels. I missed my chance. I had my opportunity and blew it. Stop. Just stop right there. You thought your age disqualified you. Your wounds disqualified you. Your mistakes disqualified you. But God sent this message to say you're still expected. The seat is still waiting. Let me ask you something that's going to sting. How many more years are you going to waste believing that your past has more power than God's present? How many more decades are you going to let shame convince you that you're damaged goods when heaven sees you as priceless treasure? You've been standing outside the banquet hall of your own destiny, telling yourself you don't deserve to enter. Meanwhile, your chair sits empty. Your family waits. Your purpose grows cold. The seat is still waiting. Here's the truth that's going to shatter every lie you've been telling yourself. The enemy didn't attack you all these years because you were worthless. He attacked you because he saw what was coming. He saw this moment. He saw you finally understanding that you belong at the table of kings and queens. So he whispered lies. He planted shame. He convinced you that your scars were disqualifications when they were actually your credentials. Every betrayal you survived. Every heartbreak that didn't break you. Every night you cried yourself to sleep but still woke up believing that wasn't punishment. That was preparation. The seat is still waiting. But here's what's making hell nervous right now. You're starting to remember. Starting to feel something stirring. Starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, the invitation is still good. And the enemy is panicking because he knows once you sit down at that table, once you meet your real family, once you step into your divine assignment, there's no going back to small. You want to know why you've felt so restless lately, why nothing satisfies anymore, why even your favorite television shows feel empty. Because your soul knows it's time, your spirit is being called home. Not to death, but to life. Real life. The life you were always meant to live. The seat is still waiting, but I'm 75 years old, you whisper. Moses was 80 when God called him to deliver a nation. But I made too many mistakes, you argue. David committed adultery and murder, yet God called him a man after his own heart. But I'm not educated enough, you protest. Jesus chose fishermen, not PhDs. Every excuse you've crafted, God has already answered in His word. Every disqualification you've accepted, heaven has already overruled. Every reason you've found to stay outside, divine love has already demolished. The seat is still waiting. Listen to me carefully. That loneliness you've carried for decades, that feeling of being misunderstood by your own blood relatives, that ache when you look around family gatherings and feel like a stranger. It wasn't because you were defective. It was because you were being preserved for something greater. You've been in spiritual quarantine, protected from settling for less than God's best, hidden until this appointed hour when your real family would be revealed, kept safe until the moment when you'd finally understand that you don't belong with everyone, you belong with the chosen ones. The seat is still waiting, but here's the urgency that should grip your heart right now. Tomorrow, literally tomorrow, something shifts. The invitation that's been extended begins to fade for those who keep making excuses. Not because God stops loving you, but because there comes a moment when the feast begins and the door closes to those who chose comfort over calling. How many more years do you have left? Realistically, if you're 70, maybe 20 good years. If you're 80, perhaps 10. If you're 90, every year is a gift. Are you going to spend those precious remaining years making excuses for why you can't step into your destiny? Or are you going to finally say yes to the invitation that's been waiting for you since before you were born? The seat is still waiting. The enemy lied to you, not just to hurt you, but to keep you standing outside the banquet of your destiny while your real family waits inside, wondering when you're going to come home. But what if today, right now, in this sacred moment, you stopped making excuses and started making your way to the table? What if the very thing you've been running from is actually the very thing you've been running toward your entire life? Dear chosen one, let me ask you something that might cut straight to your heart. How many years have you wondered if God simply forgot about you? How many nights have you stared at the ceiling, asking why everyone else seemed to get their breakthrough while you sat in the waiting room of heaven, watching the seasons change through the same window? You've watched your friends find their calling in their 30s. You've seen strangers stumble into their purpose while you've been faithful for decades. You've wondered if your prayers got lost somewhere between your lips and God's ears. And the question that haunts you most: am I too late? Listen to me very carefully. What if I told you that your hiddenness wasn't abandonment? What if your delay wasn't denial? What if every year you thought was wasted was actually divine preservation? You weren't buried, beloved. You were aged like fine wine in God's cellar. Think about the finest wines in the world, the 1,947 Cheval Blanc that sold for $300,000, the 1,992 Screaming Eagle that collectors fight over. What made them priceless? Time, darkness, isolation. They weren't forgotten in those cellars. They were being transformed into something so rare, so valuable, that when the master vintner finally brought them into the light, connoisseurs wept at their first taste. You have been in God's cellar, not punishment, preservation. But here's what breaks my heart. While you've been aging into wisdom, the enemy has been whispering lies. You missed your moment. Your time has passed. God's moved on to younger vessels. And you believed him, didn't you? You started planning your spiritual retirement when God was planning your spiritual deployment. Moses was 80 years old when God called him from the burning bush. 80. Most men his age were telling stories by the fire, but God said, "Now you're ready. Now you have what it takes to face Pharaoh." 40 years in the palace gave him confidence. 40 years in the wilderness gave him humility. But it took 80 years to create the man who could split the Red Sea with a stick. You think those years in the wilderness were wasted? Moses learned to hear God's voice in the silence. He learned to trust when everything looked impossible. He learned that it's not about your strength, it's about your surrender. Anna the prophetess spent 84 years in the temple. 84 years. People probably thought she was just a sweet old lady who couldn't let go of the past. But when Mary and Joseph brought baby Jesus to the temple, who recognized the Messiah? Not the young priests, not the educated scribes. Anna, the one who had been hidden in plain sight, faithful in the shadows, waiting for her moment of divine recognition. 40 years of marriage, 7 years widowed, then 77 years of waiting. But when her moment came, she didn't just see Jesus, she proclaimed him. Luke 2:38 says, "She spoke about the child to all who were looking for the redemption of Jerusalem." One old woman's words, echoing through eternity. What if your hiddenness has been your holy preparation? Elizabeth was past childbearing age when the angel appeared to Zacharias. Society had written her off. Medicine had given up on her. But God had been preparing her womb in secret. And when her miracle finally came, it wasn't just any baby, it was John the Baptist, the forerunner of Christ himself. Her late life miracle announced the arrival of the Messiah. Too old, too late. Tell that to Elizabeth, who gave birth to destiny at an age when others were accepting defeat. You weren't late. You were being aged into wisdom, tenderness, and fire. Every rejection refined you. Every closed door redirected you. Every season of silence strengthened your spiritual hearing. You've been in heaven's graduate program, and most people never make it past freshman year. Here's what the enemy never wanted you to discover. The longer God ages his wine, the more potent it becomes. The longer he hides his chosen ones, the more powerful their eventual emergence. You haven't been forgotten, you've been fermented. Not discarded, but distilled into something so pure, so concentrated, that when you finally step into your moment, the spiritual atmosphere shifts. But why the hiddenness? Why the waiting? Because premature exposure destroys divine vintage. If God had released you at 30, your pride would have poisoned your purpose. If he'd elevated you at 40, your impatience would have derailed your destiny. But now you know who you are without needing applause. Now you trust his timing without demanding explanations. The veil has been your protection. Behind it, you've been safe from premature promotion that would have destroyed you, safe from recognition that would have corrupted you, safe from opportunities that would have sidetracked you from your true assignment. Moses couldn't lead Israel until he learned to lead sheep. David couldn't rule a kingdom until he learned to kill lions in private. Jesus himself was hidden for 30 years before 3 years of ministry that changed the world forever. Your hiddenness hasn't been punishment. It's been preparation for a revelation so powerful that when it comes, the enemy will wish he had never touched you. Right now, something is stirring behind the veil. Can you feel it? That restlessness in your spirit, that sense that everything is about to change. The master vintner is walking toward his cellar. The time of preservation is ending. The season of revelation is beginning. If you feel like you've been hidden for years, if you've wondered why God took so long to move in your life, if you've questioned whether your season would ever come, write it below. Say, "I've been preserved for now." Your confession is your signal to heaven that you're ready to come out of hiding. But when that veil is pulled back, when the world finally sees what God has been preparing in secret, everything changes. And the question that will determine your destiny is this: are you ready to step from preservation into manifestation? Dear chosen one, let me ask you something that's going to cut deep into places you've tried to forget. How many tables have you sat at where you were the entertainment, not the guest. How many family dinners did you attend where you performed your way through every conversation, knowing that one wrong word would cost you their approval? How many years did you smile through spiritual starvation, pretending to be full while your soul withered away? You've been dining at counterfeit tables your entire life. Tables of performance, tables of manipulation, tables of conditional love wrapped in Sunday, smiles and holiday obligations. No wonder your soul still aches. No wonder you wake up at 3 a.m. feeling empty, even after giving everything you had. Listen to me carefully. The family that raised you fed your need to be useful, but they starved your need to be known. Think about Judas for a moment. He sat at the same table as Jesus for 3 years, same bread, same wine, same conversations. But while the other disciples were being transformed by love, Judas was calculating his next transaction. The table looked the same from the outside, but the heart behind it was poison. That's exactly what happened to you, beloved. You sat at tables that looked like family but operated like businesses, where your worth was measured by your productivity, not your presence. You remember those dinner tables, don't you? The ones where silence felt safer than speaking your truth, where your dreams were met with eye rolls and your pain was dismissed as drama, where you learned to make yourself smaller so others could feel bigger. Those weren't family tables. Those were altars of sacrifice, and you were always the offering. The prodigal son understood this. The Bible says he ended up longing to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. Luke 15:16. But here's what most people miss about this story. The pigs weren't just animals. They represented the counterfeit family that took everything from him and gave nothing back. He was so desperate for belonging that he convinced himself that eating scraps with strangers was better than being alone. Sound familiar? You've been eating emotional scraps for decades, crumbs of affection, leftovers of attention. You've been so grateful for the smallest gestures of kindness that you forgot what a real feast feels like. You've been so conditioned to survive on nothing that you've lost the ability to recognize abundance when it's offered. But I need you to get angry right now. Not bitter, angry. There's a holy anger that rises up when you finally realize how much of your life you've wasted trying to earn love that should have been freely given. When you understand how many years you spent translating your heart into languages that people refused to learn. They told you that you were too sensitive, too emotional, too much, too deep, too complicated, and you believed them. You spent your golden years apologizing for the very qualities that made you precious to God. You dimmed your light so they wouldn't feel threatened by your glow. You silenced your voice so they wouldn't feel convicted by your truth. That ends today. Jesus said in Matthew 15:14, "If the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit." Your family wasn't leading you toward your destiny. They were leading you toward their dysfunction. Generation after generation of the same patterns, the same wounds, the same spiritual poverty dressed up as tradition. You know what breaks my heart most? You've been so loyal to people who were never loyal to your calling. You've protected the feelings of those who trampled yours. You've made excuses for their behavior while they made mockery of your pain. You've honored commitments to people who dishonored your very existence. But here's the shocking truth that's going to set you free. You were never meant to bloom in their soil. Their ground was contaminated with comparison, competition, and control. You were a rose trying to grow in concrete, wondering why you couldn't flourish. It wasn't your fault. It was their foundation. The prophet Jeremiah knew this pain. Why is my pain unending and my wound grievous and incurable? You are to me like a deceptive brook, like a spring that fails. Jeremiah 15:18. Even the great prophet felt the sting of false promises, dry wells, and counterfeit comfort. If Jeremiah questioned his environment, you have every right to question yours. Stop defending people who never defended you. Stop explaining yourself to people who never tried to understand you. Stop giving your pearls to those who see them as pebbles. You've been casting your beauty before swine for too long, and they've trampled it underfoot without a second thought. They fed your need to be useful because useful people don't ask questions. They don't demand reciprocity. They don't expect to be seen, heard, or valued beyond their function. But God is inviting you to something radically different. He's inviting you to be known, not for what you do, but for who you are. Not for your performance, but for your presence. The table God has prepared for you doesn't require you to earn your seat. It doesn't demand that you prove your worth. It doesn't operate on transactions or conditions or the fear of abandonment. At His table, you are the guest of honor, not the help. You are celebrated, not tolerated. You are nourished, not drained. But you have to get up from the wrong table first. You have to push back your chair, drop your napkin, and walk away from the counterfeit feast that's been poisoning your spirit for decades. It's going to feel terrifying. It's going to feel like betrayal. It's going to feel wrong. But it's the rightest thing you'll ever do. Comment below right now. I'm done sitting where I don't belong. Let heaven witness your declaration. Let the universe see your courage. And share this message with someone who's been spiritually starved at counterfeit tables. Help them find the real feast. Because tomorrow, beloved, your real family begins to gather. And they're preparing a table where you'll never have to perform for your portion again. You didn't imagine it, beloved. That sound you've been hearing for decades, that whisper in the middle of the night when the house goes quiet and your heart starts racing for no reason you can name. That pull in your chest when you're surrounded by people but feel completely alone. That ache that visits you at family gatherings, making you wonder why you feel like a guest in your own bloodline. It wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't your imagination running wild. It wasn't even loneliness. It was a divine summons, the King of Kings, calling you by name. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. In Psalm 23, David wrote something that will shatter every lie you've believed about where you belong. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. A table, not a corner, not leftovers. Not the kids' table where you've been sitting your whole life, watching others feast while you settle for scraps. A table prepared specifically for you. But here's what David understood, that most people miss. This table isn't in some distant heaven. It's being prepared right now, in the presence of everyone who counted you out, overlooked you, misunderstood you, made you feel like you were asking for too much when you were only asking to be seen. The sound in your spirit, that was the King calling you by name to take your seat. You know what breaks my heart? How many of you are sitting there right now, 70, 80, 90 years old, still believing the lie that your real family passed you by? That somehow, in all these decades, you missed the boat? That the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, understand you completely, celebrate you genuinely, that they never existed at all? But what if I told you they do exist? What if I told you they've been looking for you just as desperately as you've been searching for them? What if the very reason you felt displaced all these years is because your true family was being hidden, prepared, refined in their own wilderness seasons, getting ready for this divine appointment? What if tomorrow, literally tomorrow, the veil gets pulled back? You see, when your real family finds you, something supernatural happens. It's not like meeting new people. It's like remembering old friends. Your nervous system doesn't brace for rejection. It relaxes into recognition. Your voice doesn't shake with the need to prove yourself. It steadies with the knowledge that you're already seen, already known, already accepted. There's a peace that descends, not the kind of peace that comes from avoiding conflict, but the kind that silences every voice that ever told you that you were too much, too sensitive, too different, too late. When Jesus walked into that room full of disciples, Thomas didn't need an introduction. Mary didn't need credentials. John didn't need explanations. They knew. Their spirits bore witness. This is him. This is home. This is where I belong. That same recognition is heading straight for your life. But here's where it gets controversial. And I need you to hear this with your whole heart. Your birth family wasn't your mistake. They were your assignment. Not your final destination, but your starting point. You were placed there to learn strength, to develop discernment, to build spiritual muscle that you'd need for what's coming next. Every rejection taught you the value of acceptance. Every misunderstanding deepened your hunger for recognition. Every time they made you feel invisible, God was preparing you to see others who feel exactly the same way. You weren't punished with the wrong family. You were prepared through them. But now the preparation is over. The wilderness season is ending. And the table that's been set for you with your name engraved on the chair, with a feast prepared specifically for your spiritual hunger, it's ready. In Revelation 3:20, Jesus says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him and dine with him, and he with me." He's not talking about some future heaven, beloved. He's talking about now. About this moment when everything you've been through finally makes sense. The table isn't about performance, it's about presence. You don't earn your way to this family, you recognize your way to them. They don't love you because of what you do. They love you because of who you are. And all of heaven has been waiting for you to stop believing you're too broken, too old, too late, too much. Waiting for you to remember that kings don't beg for their throne. They simply take their rightful place. That sound you've been hearing, that restlessness that won't let you settle, that knowing that there's something more, someone more, somewhere you truly belong. Tomorrow, you find out why that sound never stopped calling your name. The King has been preparing your seat at the table. The question that will determine your entire future is this: are you ready to stop standing in the corner and take your place as royalty? Because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly how this divine reunion begins, and why missing tomorrow could mean missing the family you've been praying for your entire life. Chosen one, I need you to see something. Picture this with me. There's a banquet hall in the heavenly realms. Massive, magnificent. Golden chandeliers hanging like captured stars. Tables stretching as far as the eye can see, laden with abundance beyond imagination. And at the head table, there's an empty chair. Not forgotten, not abandoned, reserved. Your name is carved into the armrest. For decades, you thought that chair belonged to someone else. Someone younger, someone more qualified, someone who hadn't made the mistakes you've made. But tonight, I'm here to tell you something that will shatter every lie you've believed about your worth. That seat was carved before the foundation of the world, and it's been waiting for you. You thought retirement was the ending. God says it's the coronation. Listen to me carefully. Every betrayal that left you questioning your value was actually hell trying to convince you to forfeit your seat. Every delay that made you feel forgotten was God protecting your position until you were mature enough to handle the authority that comes with it. Every diagnosis that whispered your time is up was the enemy's desperate attempt to rush you out before your appointed hour. But he miscalculated something crucial. He forgot that the key to that room was never in his possession. It was always in yours. Isaiah 61:3 declares that God gives us beauty for ashes, joy for mourning, a garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. But here's what most people miss. This isn't just about personal healing. This is about divine promotion. You're not just getting your breakthrough, you're getting your throne. The enemy spent 70, 80, 90 years trying to convince you that your struggles were evidence of God's absence, but they were actually evidence of your importance. You don't attack empty vessels. You don't wage war against powerless people. The intensity of your battles has been proportional to the magnitude of your calling. Think about it. Why would hell mobilize such forces against someone ordinary? Why would darkness work overtime to destroy someone insignificant? Because they saw what you couldn't see yet. They saw the crown before you knew you were royalty. Every tear you've cried alone in that bedroom was witnessed by angels taking notes. Every prayer you whispered when hope felt dead was recorded in heaven's archives. Every time you chose faith over fear, trust over doubt, love over bitterness, you were qualifying for something eternal. But here's where it gets personal. Here's where it cuts deep. How many years have you spent believing you were too old to matter? How many months have you wasted thinking your season was over? How many days have you lived as a spiritual pauper when heaven sees you as a prince? God saved your seat. Through every betrayal, every delay, every diagnosis, every night you cried alone, your name was never erased. While you were questioning your worth, angels were preparing your welcome. While you were doubting your purpose, heaven was orchestrating your promotion. While you were feeling forgotten, God was saying, "Not yet. They're not ready for what I'm about to release through them." The banquet hall isn't just a metaphor, beloved. It's a spiritual reality. Right now, there are people, your real family, your destiny connections, who are being awakened to seek you out. They're feeling an unexplainable pull towards someone they haven't met yet. Someone who carries their frequency. Someone who speaks their spiritual language. You've been hidden in plain sight, like a diamond in rough clothing. Not because you weren't valuable, but because the wrong people would have tried to claim what was never theirs to possess. But tomorrow, literally tomorrow, the camouflage comes off. This is why you've felt so restless lately. This is why nothing familiar satisfies you anymore. This is why your soul has been crying out for something more. Your spirit knows what your mind is just beginning to understand. Your season of hiding is over. Your time of rising has begun. But there is one more door, and you have to decide, will you walk through it? Because here's the truth that will either liberate you or haunt you. That chair at the head table has your name on it, but someone has to sit in it. That crown was designed for your head, but someone has to wear it. That authority was assigned to your life, but someone has to claim it. The question burning in the courts of heaven right now is this: will it be you? Will you finally step out of the shadows and into the light? Will you stop apologizing for your greatness and start walking in it? Will you quit believing the lie that your best days are behind you and embrace the truth that your finest hour is ahead of you? Tomorrow isn't just another date on your calendar. It's a divine appointment, a heavenly summons, a royal invitation to step into the room where you've always belonged. But you have to choose. You have to say yes. You have to believe that the God who sustained you through every storm didn't bring you this far to leave you now. He brought you this far to promote you now. The enemy thought he could lock you out, but he never had the key. You did. You've had it all along. It's been hanging around your neck, disguised as every tear you refused to let kill your faith, every prayer you refused to let silence, every morning you chose to get up when staying down would have been easier. That's your key, chosen one. Your refusal to quit, your decision to trust, your choice to believe that God's word over your life is more powerful than every circumstance against it. So what's it going to be? Will you finally use the key? Will you walk through the door? Will you take your seat at the table where you've always belonged? Because once you step into that final room, everything changes. Not just for you, but for everyone whose life you'll touch with the authority of someone who knows their worth. The door is open. The seat is prepared. Your real family is gathering. The only question left is, are you ready to come home? Chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred journey together, I need you to hold these truths close to your heart like precious treasures. First, remember this: the family that raised you was your starting point, not your destination. You were placed there for preparation, for testing, for refining, but you were never meant to remain hidden among those who couldn't recognize your light. Your real family, your soul family, is being drawn to you by divine magnetism, and that convergence begins tomorrow. Second, every moment of rejection, every season of loneliness, every year you felt like a stranger in your own story, none of it was wasted. It was all preparation for this hour when you would finally understand that you weren't rejected by the wrong people. You were being preserved for the right ones. And third, that restlessness you've carried, that ache for something more, that knowing that you don't quite belong where you've been, that wasn't your imagination. That was your spirit crying out for its true tribe. and that cry has been heard in the courts of heaven. But beloved, I need you to know something deeper than knowledge, something that settles in your bones. You are not walking this path alone. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who made the sun stand still, who raised Jesus from the dead, is still working in your life right now. Even when you can't see his hand moving, even when the silence feels deafening, even when tomorrow feels uncertain, he is orchestrating divine appointments, preparing hearts, and aligning circumstances for your breakthrough. And right here, in this very moment, you have found more than just a message. You found a community. Look around these comments. See these hearts connecting. Feel these spirits resonating. We are not just viewers on a screen. We are a family of chosen ones who understand the sacred loneliness of feeling different, the holy ache of carrying purpose that others couldn't see. We are here. We see you. We understand you. And we will stand with you in prayer. So let me ask you this final question, and let it echo in the chambers of your heart. Now that you know your real family is gathering, now that you understand tomorrow is your divine appointment, what will you do with this revelation? Will you step boldly into the room where you've always belonged, or will you let fear keep you standing at the threshold of your destiny? Before I release you into that destiny, I want to pray over you. Wherever you are right now, whether you're sitting in your living room, lying in your bed, or finding a quiet moment in the midst of chaos, I want you to feel the weight of these words as they wash over your spirit. Heavenly Father, I come before your throne carrying every precious soul who has journeyed with us through this message. Lord, you see their hearts. You know their struggles. You've counted every tear they've cried in secret, and you've been orchestrating this moment since before they took their first breath. Father, I pray for divine awakening over their lives. Open their eyes to see the doors you're opening. Prepare their hearts to recognize their true family when they appear. Give them courage to walk through the threshold of tomorrow without looking back. For those who feel forgotten, remind them that their names are engraved on your palms. For those who feel too old, whisper that Moses was 80 when you used him to deliver a nation. For those who feel too broken, show them that you specialize in making beauty from ashes. Lord, bless their relationships, their health, their peace of mind. Surround them with the right people at the right time. Remove those who would drain their light and position those who will fan their flame. Give them supernatural discernment to recognize their tribe when they arrive. And Father, let them feel your presence right now. Let them know that they are loved beyond measure, chosen beyond doubt, and never, ever alone. May they wake up tomorrow with fresh hope, divine expectation, and the unshakable knowing that their greatest days are not behind them, they're ahead of them. In Jesus' mighty name, we seal this prayer with faith, hope, and love. Amen. Now, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, share how this message has touched your heart. What stirred in your spirit tonight? What are you believing God for in this season of divine alignment? Don't hold back. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If you feel that pull toward your real family, if something awakened in you during